The first thing I remember after they found me wasn't the pain in my wrists, the cheap plastic zip ties cut deep, but that was just stage dressing. It was the smell. The staff room at the gallery always smelled faintly of stale coffee and industrial strength disinfectant, but that morning, the smell of fear was thick, clinging to the air like humidity from the Guadalquivir River. My fear was real enough, don't misunderstand me, but the look I put on my face for the first policia who found me, that was a performance worthy of the Teatro de la Maestranza. Wide-eyed, trembling, the perfect victim. They were professionals, I managed to choke out, my voice ragged, fast, clean. They knew exactly where the gold was. The officer, a big, weary man, whose name I don't recall, nodded, cutting the ties from my hands. The relief felt genuine, even though the whole scene was a fabrication I'd helped build. I was Javier, 43 years old, and for the last 17 years, I'd been the trustworthy, dependable night security officer at the Círculo de Artes Gallery in Seville, just a few blocks from the Triana Bridge. I was a man of routine, a man who believed in keeping things locked up, and that night, I was the one who personally disarmed the things that kept the world honest. They called it the Great Andalusian Heist in the papers later. They talked about the precision, the lack of forced entry, the targeting of specific historical gold artifacts from the temporary Royal Treasury exhibition. It pointed to international syndicates, Interpol suspects, experts who could bypass German-made laser grids and pressure sensors. They thought I was zip-tied and knocked out. I told them I was. I told them I woke up feeling dizzy, seeing only shadows. I told them they must have used gas. It made a clean story. A sophisticated job that even a good man like me, a veteran of the service, couldn't stop. It wasn't my fault. I didn't wake up one day planning to be a criminal. I woke up one day staring at a foreclosure notice on my family home in the barrio, the shame of the failed churreria business, my wife's business, my failed investment clinging to me like that awful disinfectant smell. 6 months of running from calls, hiding bills, and telling my daughter everything was fine. That's how deep the shame was. When the opportunity came, it didn't look like a crime. It looked like an insurance claim, a financial reset button. My role, as I explained it to the lead investigator, was passive. I was the unlucky one on duty. I told myself, and later the police, that I was simply supposed to look away, maybe leave a service door ajar, and then get hit on the head when the professionales came in. A small cut of the payout, tax-free, enough to clear the debt and put the lie of the churreria behind me. It felt like a necessary evil, a victimless crime where the only person who paid was a massive insurance conglomerate in Madrid that wouldn't miss the gold. I knew the people involved, of course, a small, tight crew. They needed my knowledge, the blind spots in the CCTV, the manual override for the laser curtain near the vault room. They were quiet, quick, and they promised me silence and solvency. They promised me my life back. But that night, sitting in the fluorescent light of the staff room, holding my wrists where the ties had been, I realized my carefully crafted narrative of passive victimization was crumbling. They asked me why I didn't fight back. I told them I was terrified. That was half a lie. The other half was that the man who tied me up wasn't a shadow, wasn't a stranger, and wasn't the professional they were hunting. The man who tied me up was family, and that's why I couldn't tell them the truth. Not yet. I was protecting him. That's what I told myself for weeks. But the real crime, the one I'm finally confessing now, wasn't about the gold or the debt. It was about the shame I felt when he looked at me. And the cold, calculated revenge I planned in that tiny, sterile police interview room at the commissaria. The pressure didn't start with the bank or the debt. It started with the silence in my own kitchen. When the churreria failed, the money went first, then the respect. My wife, Maria, never screamed. She just looked at me like I was a broken machine. And my daughter, Clara, she just stopped asking for things. That was the worst humiliation. I was the rock, the solid one, the man who earned his wage defending other people's precious things, but I couldn't defend my own home. Ruben, my younger brother, was the exact opposite. 4 years younger, a flashy sales manager for a national construction firm. He drove a black Audi, lived in a newer apartment, and smelled like expensive aftershave. He didn't rub it in, not overtly. He'd just offer help. Javier, let me lend you what you need. Like I was a charity case, not his blood. He'd bailed me out before, small amounts, always cementing that silent, sickening sense of obligation. The debt I owed him wasn't just money. It was my pride, ground into the concrete. One night, Ruben came to my house. Not to lend, but to propose. He pulled up his Audi right outside, like a spotlight on my failure. He knew about my job, knew the gallery was exhibiting the gold worth more than all the buildings on our street combined. "This isn't a loan, hermano," he said, leaning across my dusty kitchen table, his tie perfect. "This is a business proposal. I know some people. They need an inside man. Not a thief, Javier, a consultant. You show them the weak points. You make sure the sensors are quiet. Insurance pays out. Nobody gets hurt. And your debt to me? Cleared. Plus a percentage, enough to buy the bank off your back forever." I was repulsed. I told him no. I told him I had a clean record. A pension I was building, a daughter who thought I was a hero. For 2 weeks, I told myself no, but the pressure mounted. The bank calls became daily. Maria started selling off her jewelry, quietly so I wouldn't notice. Then Ruben sent me the photos, not of the debt, but of the floor plans for the gallery's server room. He knew exactly where the camera mainframes were. He knew the specific model of the old German security system. He said, "Javier, you could fix this in 3 minutes. You just hit the emergency maintenance override on that panel. The silent alarms go offline for 12 minutes before the system registers a fault. 12 minutes is all they need." That was the moment I stopped being the honest security guard and became the accomplice. I had told myself, and I told the police, I was just leaving the door ajar. A passive act, a crime of omission. Here's the truth. I didn't just look away. I was the one who personally went into the server room and manually disabled the silent alarms for a precise 12-minute window. It wasn't just fear of debt anymore. It became a perverse sense of control. I knew the system better than the technicians. I was smarter than Ruben's professionals. I realized I wasn't just saving my skin. I was finally using my useless, boring 17 years of expertise for something big. That felt good, a sharp, cold satisfaction. I justified it as a victimless transfer of wealth. The gold was historical, untouchable. It didn't belong to a person, it belonged to a corporation. The plans were perfect. We met twice in a dim bar near the dockyards. Ruben and his 2 silent, faceless socios. They were rough, not like the phantom experts the papers described. I drew diagrams of the vault, explained the night patrol patterns, the best place to stage the knockout. But on the night of the job, when Ruben showed up, there was a shift in the air. We were in the cramped security booth. The others were already inside, waiting. Ruben was supposed to be the getaway driver, coordinating from outside. He looked at the security panel, which I had just set to maintenance mode. He didn't congratulate me. He didn't thank me. He just checked his watch. 12 minutes is tight, Javier, he muttered, adjusting his cuff. You should have given them 15. Relax. You did what you had to do. His tone was worse than any insult. It was calculating contempt. He was still the rich little brother looking down at the desperate older one. That's when I realized the family debt was just an excuse for Ruben. For him, this wasn't about rescuing me. This was about the power he held over me. He knew I was trapped, and he was enjoying it. That night, I feared getting caught by the policia, but I suddenly feared being betrayed by my brother even more. The shame of owing him everything eclipsed the shame of the crime itself. The next thing I knew, Ruben was pulling out the zip ties and forcing me into the staff room. "Look scared," he whispered, his face inches from mine. "We're making this look good for the cameras. Play the victim, Javier. It's what you're best at." He tied me up quickly and expertly, not checking if the circulation was cut off. He didn't even look me in the eye. He was already gone before I heard the muffled clink of the artifacts being loaded outside. By then, the police weren't my biggest problem. My own brother was, and the moment I decided to betray him was only minutes away. The 12 minutes felt like an hour of sharp, ringing silence. Taped to a chair in the staff room, my hands bound tightly, I could feel the adrenaline drain out, replaced by a cold, clear focus. I wasn't thinking about the gold or the debt. I was thinking about Ruben's expensive shoes walking out, leaving me for the police to find. When I heard the faint, muffled sounds of the heavy bags scraping the marble floors outside, it wasn't the sound of money being made, it was the sound of my life being handed over to him. When the sirens finally wailed in the distance, the inevitable consequence of a system fault that registered too late, I started acting. I kicked the chair over, knocked papers off the desk, and made sure my face was pale and slick with theatrical sweat when the police finally broke in. I sold the lie perfectly. The dizzy victim, the man of honor violated. The pressure from the commissaria was intense but manageable. Detective Ruiz, the lead investigator, was sympathetic but persistent. He kept running the timeline. The system was disabled for precisely 12 minutes, Javier. Why 12? Why not 10? Why not 20? I played dumb. I shrugged. "I don't know, boss." "Sir, that's why you're the professionals." My story held up because the lie was constructed around a solid core of truth. I did know the building better than anyone, and Ruben was one of the men who tied me up. The real trouble started a week later. Ruben called me from a burner phone, using the cautious, slightly distorted voice he'd developed for business. He arranged a meeting in a deserted patch of industrial ground near the port. No Audi this time. He was driving a rental van. He looked nervous, his expensive suit slightly rumpled. It was difficult, he hissed, tossing a heavy taped package onto the passenger seat. The artifacts were harder to fence than we thought, much hotter than we calculated. The buyers cut the price deeply. I tore the tape off. Inside, stacks of euros, smelling faintly of the vault they'd just left. It was exactly 85,000 el. It was enough to cover my initial crippling debt to the bank and maybe a few months of breathing room. It was supposed to be a percentage of the haul, a substantial life-changing amount. I looked at the number. I looked at the headlines. The gold was estimated to be worth over $20 million on the black market. 85,000? I asked, my voice flat, deadly quiet. "Ruben, that's barely half of what you promised me just to clear the debt. Where is the rest? Where is the percentage we agreed on?" Ruben laughed a short, ugly sound. "Be sensible, Javier. You're lucky you got this much. You're radioactive. You were the inside man. We put the targets on our backs, not you. Take the money, clear your mortgage, and disappear. Or would you rather tell the police you were the one who signed off on the maintenance log? You're paid. Go home." That was the moment. The zip ties hadn't broken me. His condescending betrayal did. The shame of owing money was replaced by the incandescent, blinding shame of being played for a fool by my own brother. He saw me as weak, desperate, and ultimately dispensable. He didn't view me as a co-conspirator. He viewed me as a debt that needed to be paid off with the bare minimum. This is the crucial part, the lie I've been telling the viewer. I claimed I was confessing now out of regret or to protect my family. That's true, but not the whole truth. My confession is motivated by one thing only: revenge against Ruben. When I went back to the comisaria a week after the payoffs, supposedly for a routine follow-up, I wasn't going to clear my conscience. I was going to secure my own sentence while detonating his life. I looked Detective Ruiz in the eye and started to talk, admitting my role as the inside man, the man who disabled the alarms and staged his kidnapping. I told him the shame was too much. I was a man broken by debt, forced into a crime. But while I confessed to my actions, I started weaving in details about the getaway that only Ruben could have known, carefully embedded in my testimony about the crime. I talked about a specific old rust-colored container near the port where Ruben often stored illicit goods, a detail utterly irrelevant to my own crime of omission, but a detail that points directly to a hidden storage unit. I mentioned a specific brand of cheap, unique cigarettes one of Ruben's silent partners smoked, which Ruben had once mocked. I spoke of a specific coded phrase Ruben used on the burner phone when coordinating the drop-off location, which I claimed to have overheard from the staff room. I gave the policia the truth about my involvement, which sealed my conviction, but I gave them coded, actionable evidence that could only lead to Ruben's capture and the recovery of the bulk of the gold. I was using the court system not as an agent of justice, but as a weapon to destroy the person who had humiliated me. I was willing to sacrifice my freedom for a short time, just to watch his arrogant, clean life collapse, my self-image shattered into something cold and sharp. I realized I didn't care about the gallery, the gold, or even the debt anymore. I only cared about settling the score with the one person who thought they had beaten me. I looked at the Ueza's face, and I knew I had to tell the whole story, but not the one the abogado wanted me to tell, the sob story about debt. I had to tell the one that would hurt Ruben more than prison could ever hurt me. That was the only thing that made the shame bearable. The interrogation room was cold, even for Seville in late October. Ruiz had listened to my full, carefully structured testimony, the one where I admitted to the technical sabotage and faking the victim role. My abogado kept shooting me frantic, worried looks, whispering for me to stick to the pre-agreed plea. But I ignored him. This wasn't for the Uez, it was for Ruben. The climax wasn't a sudden explosion, but a slow, calculated tightening of the noose. Ruiz slid a photo across the tablet, a grainy surveillance image of the rental van near the port on the night of the drop. "Javier," Ruiz said, his voice low, "you said you didn't know who the thieves were. You said you only spoke to a handler on the phone." "That was true at first," I confessed, leaning in, selling the repentance. "But my brother Ruben, he was the handler. He set the whole thing up. He's the one who promised me solvency and delivered 85,000 euros. Then I delivered the final crippling blow. I described the specific storage container near the port, the one I'd mentioned earlier, feigning ignorance. I described the unusual lock mechanism I'd noticed Ruben using once years ago. He used it to store things for his construction business, expensive tools. He's very careful about his things. I made it sound like a reluctant, painful admission. "But what about the gold, Javier? Where did that go?" Ruiz pressed. "I don't know where the gold went," I insisted, genuinely this time. "But I know where the money he gave me came from." He said he had trouble fencing the hot items. He mentioned they had to move a few pieces quickly, selling them far below value to a low-level contact in Malaga. I threw in the specific street name in Malaga Street. I knew Ruben had previously visited for a legitimate construction deal. I handed them the map, the specific direction, the exact name of the barrio. It was just enough, when combined with the other coded clues, to launch a focused, regional investigation that zeroed in on my brother's network. My confession sealed my fate. I was convicted for accessory to grand theft and obstruction of justice. Given the valuable cooperation and the fact that I was technically tied up for the police to find, proving a level of coercion, my sentence was surprisingly lenient. 3 years, maximum security, but with the possibility of early release. A terrible consequence, yes, but survivable. The true resolution came 2 weeks into my sentence. I saw the headline on the guard's discarded newspaper. Arrests in Great Heist follow security guard's testimony. Key suspect identified as financier brother. Ruben was caught in Malaga trying to move the remaining artifacts. The police found the bulk of the gold thanks to my coordinates and the clues about his shady business contacts. I don't feel regret for the gallery, the insurance company, or the jouets I lied to. My regret is sharper, more selfish. My only regret is that I didn't demand more money from Ruben when I had the chance and that I ever trusted him in the first place. In prison, I'm not the disgraced security guard who lost his job. I am the man who took down his powerful, arrogant brother. The other inmates, the small-time dealers and petty thieves, respect that. I paid the price for the crime, but Ruben paid the price for the betrayal. He's looking at 10 years, maybe more. He was never built for this kind of life. I sometimes sit here, looking at the gray walls, and think about the psychological cost. The truth is, I don't sleep soundly because of the gold or the lie to the police. I sleep soundly knowing I am the one who inflicted the biggest wound. I let the debt and the shame turn me into a criminal, but I let the humiliation turn me into something much colder, an informer who disguised his ultimate betrayal as an act of moral conscience. My self-justification is now simple, stripped clean of any pretense of duty or family. I was owed. I collected. And the best currency of all isn't money. It's spite. The shame of owing money? That's temporary. That's a phone call and a stack of bills. The shame of being played for a fool by your own blood, of being used as a pathetic, disposable puppet, that stays with you. And that is what I made sure Ruben pays for, year after year, until he realizes the debt I imposed on him is far heavier than any mortgage. Those cheap plastic zip ties they used on me, they weren't there to stop me. They were there to make me look honest. But honestly, I didn't need them. I was already tied up by the numbers.